Today is Monday, May 20th, 2019, and it is now 6 p.m. This meeting of the Klein ISD Board of Trustees is now open. Representing the quorum tonight is Ms. Kathy Arlano, Doug James, Chris Todd, and myself, Georgianne Reitmeyer. We'll now begin the workshop portion of our meeting, preliminary review and planning for the 2019-20 budget. Dr. Champion.
Thank you. So we're excited there's a quorum here. Thank you all for being here. Julie is on her way. She has a kid event. And so we met this morning actually with Dan, and they've assembled some slides. We did send those out to y'all, and we have some hard copies.
Yes,
for
I'm
folks.
getting them together.
Great, good deal. Thank you. And so what we're kind of the overview, and Dan will hit the goals and kind of where we're heading, but it's really just a real HB3 is still out there. It's still in conference committee. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but then getting down to the numbers and what those look like at this point. That's really kind of where we are. Unfortunately, because the session is there until essentially Memorial Day, we won't know anything until that is all done. So we have some scenarios.
All right.
Thank you, Dan.
Last week we were talking about this as we were putting the slide deck together and thinking, well, we'll have some last minute updates this weekend or something to do today as far as updates are concerned, but what's happening in committee seems to be staying pretty close to the chest because they're not really disclosing a lot of what's going on. But so what we wanted to do is at least let you know where they stand currently. So based on the House version and the Senate, just providing you an update there. Look at prior year funding lag, which is a new requirement from the first report or the Financial Integrity Rating System in Texas. We have to report that to the board. We did provide that as a board update to meet the timing requirements, so we didn't want to go over it in a workshop setting. Also, it's a hot topic right now, current year funding versus using current year values or using prior year values. It's a big difference between the House and the Senate currently, so it's a good timing. And then update on where we're at in budget development, and then answer any questions that you may have. So you're about to get a packet, and the first thing in there will be the House Bill 3 versus the House version, and then the Senate version of that. And it's a raise your hand Texas document, and it helps highlight the differences between the two versions. And there's just a couple of things I wanted to highlight on that one. Yep, here they come.
Thanks.
Thank you.
On the
Hi, Julie.
Hi, how's it going?
We might note that Julie Dennis is now here.
All
Thank you.
right.
Sorry.
So the main item I wanted to make sure board members were familiar with is that first line item for basic allotment. The House version does provide an increase. What this states here is an increase from $5,140 to $6,030. The reality is Klein ISD's basic allotment is not $5,140. Our basic allotment is $5,724. So when you look at the differences between our $5,724 and what the House version of $6,030, it's about a 5.3% increase on the basic allotment piece. If you look at the Senate's version, they have a basic allotment of $5,880, which is about 2.7% increase. The basic allotment is the primary tool for providing funds for districts as far as formulas are concerned. But there's other areas of the changes in the system that are decreasing funding as well. So they're trying to simplify it and roll more things into the basic allotment. So I just didn't want people to get too excited when you see $5,140 to $6,030. That's a pretty big increase, $890. Because Klein received what was called CEI, Cost of Education Index, we received about 11% more because of our high cost area. You know, obviously the cost of doing business in Houston should be a little greater than some other areas of the state. And so that unfortunately has been pulled out of both bills. So the House and Senate both have removed the CEI adjustment. And so that's makes it a little tougher for areas that were receiving it. And it was a really good thing because it truly represented costs that districts were incurring that were really outside of our control. We can control the cost of living in an area. And with the majority of our costs being people, that's where those funds went. Some of the big differences is obviously flexibility. Flexibility is a key difference between the House and the Senate. The House has a lot more flexibility within the funds that they're looking to allocate. The Senate is primarily tied up into a teacher and librarian rate, $5,000. And so we'll get into some of those numbers. Testing requirements, performance based pay, and then current year versus prior year values are the key differences that you should be aware of. But there's a lot of other information in there if you'd like to read through it. If you have questions on it, feel free to always contact me at a later date. I'll be happy to answer everything I can. Right now, since the House, since they did not agree to accept the other version, each other's versions, it's now in committee, and those are the committee members that have been selected to reconcile the two. Clearly, they'll be busy for a while. Actually, they have until about Friday is the last day they can officially, realistically take action, because it does take time to get everything legally reviewed, edited, make sure it's all correct. The last day, May 27th, is only there for clerical or minor adjustments there's no official action taking place. And so realistically, this Friday will be the last. We should know first with some certainty. Either they're going to finish up in regular session or go into special session.
Yep.
Do we have a sense?
Nope. It's all closed doors right now. We have no idea. Right? Would you? I mean, yeah, we got a deal from Raise Your Hand Texas today that said it feels like that the outcome-based funding is being minimized. Nobody knows where they're going to go with current year versus prior year values. Sounds like there's going to be a healthy increase in the basic allotment.
Right.
But right now, it's all conjecture. So we don't know. And if they don't get it hammered out, then it's going to go to a special session. Bless you.
Okay.
And rolled into all of it is a property tax relief. So
Yes.
that's added to the other points of contention as far as how to accomplish that and sustainably fund it. The sales tax piece didn't draw much positive reaction, so I think that is at least some of the uncertainty there, whether we're going to have to wait till an election that whether the voters would approve something and then it requires to further compress our tax rate. I think that might be off the table as of now, just because that did not go over very well with anybody having an additional sales tax. There are some additional, so there's another handout that says Mo Casey and Associates on it. It has some good information regarding lobbying, they're putting some restrictions. I think that's really hot right now too, House Bill 29.
That was supposed to be in committee today, right?
Yes.
Any word on that?
We haven't seen the latest.
No, we haven't gotten an update since this day started.
That has pretty major implications
Yeah.
on TASB as well as PAC.
Yep. It makes literally no sense. It's an absolutely horrendous bill.
Is that
Serious
20
overreach.
Did you say 29? Yeah.
One of the key things there is that
And for
what
us.
it would force districts to do is hire our own internal, and that, you can imagine that, 1,024 districts now hiring their own internal, that's not very cost effective.
Right.
Whenever you could actually utilize an organization who, pools the efforts, gets feedback from the districts, I mean, it makes, logic.
You're hoping
A lot more
slap it
sense.
at all.
But, yeah, they're hoping that it doesn't
That
occur.
nothing will happen.
And so that's what's unfortunate, that some of these things are being twisted into a manner that makes it negative, when in reality it's just simply having a common voice.
Well, and we're the only group of providers
professionals that's being targeted.
Yeah.
And what kind of message does that send?
Well, this is a really interesting thing, because I had a conversation this weekend with somebody who had read an article about this particular deal. And they said, well, I said, this is a bad bill. This is not good. And they said, well, the way it was couched made it seem really great. I mean, of course I'm for less, for not spending taxpayer money for, what was it, taxpayer money for lobbyists. Of course I'm for that. And then I explained what that meant, and they went, oh.
Right.
So there's some real challenges with the messaging on it.
There's also some discussion on ballot language, which seems to be a common theme every session. And the big point there is that the time to inform a voter is not at the ballot. The time to inform voters is prior to them going to the polls. And so making sure that some of the requirements that just from sticker shock, someone kind of informed fully on what they're voting on. If they just see big numbers, $1 billion or something like that, it may create sticker shock here whenever they don't even know what it's for. And so we provide all this information ahead of time, and we're happy to do it. We go out and about to every community event we can and try to disclose anything people want to know. But the last thing we needed to have is actually on the ballot. It just doesn't make any sense. But other things are TRS bills, this is an unusual session because we're actually looking at funding it. Normally, we're looking at making it a defined contribution plan versus a defined benefit. So it seems that all the studies that have taken place last biennium or last session must have paid off because they realized, hey, it's a good deal. And so they are looking to actually increase the state contributions to TRS to help it be sustainable. And then there are some safety and security related items related to security facilities and mental health issues to help with that. House Bill 3, these are small print items, and you have a hard copy in front of you.
You're not
And it's still small print, even if it's this was directly from Representative Harless's office.
Oh, I see.
We are about midway down the page, Klein ISD. What that says is $16 million of new money, according to the House version of House Bill 3. So keep that number in mind. $16 million, it looks like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So actually, to the left, it says member Sam Harless, and then Klein ISD is the second one under his name. This one's right there. So that means if you scroll, this is paper.
We're scrolling.
If you
Take your finger and go
your
across.
pen over, yeah, you'll see there's a $16 million increase. That would bring they did it by ADA, average daily attendance, instead of weighted average daily attendance, which is, I'm not sure why they chose to start going that route. But basically $316 per student that attend daily.
So the original thing, House Bill 3, $16 million.
Correct, 16 million. And this has ranged from $271 to $316 now. So we've seen multiple versions of it, but it's been about pretty comfortable. So 16 million. Keep that in mind. That's on using prior year values. So the state is still assuming that we're collecting on prior year values, and I'll show you the big differences on that in a second. Statewide, if you take a look at this, you have a couple more handouts. Two of them have a pretty picture of the state of Texas. It's really colorful. One says change in total M&O revenue. And then there's another one that says change in percentage, I believe. Percent gain. So the change in total M&O revenue per current law, what you're seeing on the screen, remember we said 316, did I say 316?
316.
Okay, so 316, if you look at the bottom row here, $230 is the lowest, up to 510 is the bottom quantile. So when you look at all districts in the state, looking at what each district would gain, we're in that lower number, bottom. Which is not a good place to be when it comes to additional funding.
And you notice that the metro areas, Houston, Dallas area, there's a lot of blue on the map,
Yep.
right, Dan?
Yes,
And that's because
we previously received CEI.
this is cost of education index money going away.
Way. they're
So some of
getting
these
paid.
people in the top district are getting 16,000 extra per
Ah.
kid?
Yeah, that's transformational changes. You know, what we're seeing is not transformational changes in our funding formula. We're seeing an adjustment, and we're happy to receive an adjustment, but we don't want to mislead anybody to say that this is fixing everything, because it's
And
not.
and sometimes, Julie, like the $16,000, you can look at it compared to the other numbers, it's way off the chart.
Yeah.
And that's because you have some districts that have, 20 kids in it. And so in Texas, you gotta, I promise you, that is a small district that's seeing it's not seeing I bet it's not seeing $100,000 out of that adjustment. And so you get these weird outliers like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But if you really, even if you look at the minimum though, at 1,400 compared to where we were, there's some real dollars.
Well, and if you want to follow the students, there's the third to last column, ADA, out of the 5.1 million students that this represents.
Mhm.
You can really see where the bulk of the change is falling. And it's really between the first three sections. Some of the ones that are the smaller districts and remote areas, they might be seeing a pretty large increase.
There's a
If you want to
4.5 million students, there's a $500 swing
Yeah.
for $4.5 million. 4.5 million of the 5 million students. Right?
Yes.
And then a couple thousand for after that.
Doesn't seem like Robin Hood in just a different form.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
True.
Except for taking from the rich, they just take from everybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The CEI piece that was the true cost
Hmm.
of doing business is being rolled back, and then everybody getting basically a redistribution of that overall money and not taking into account the actual cost of where you live. Seems problematic. But the Senate did say we need to study that.
Yeah. Which
so-
actually, there is some hope in that. It's not going to happen this session. However, we've always said House Bill 3 is not a solution, it's a step towards a solution, which means for the next session, one of our big pushes from the metro areas has to be around CEI, restoration of CEI, study of CEI, and have flexibility with the money that we get this session.
And the key there is, unfortunately, will cost them even more money, because what happens historically is they're not going to take money away from the other district that just got the law. That is just going to now compound that, okay, we need to handy out for those additional. The next slide, or next area, just a different look at it in a percentage base. And again, just sometimes people it's easy to know percentages, or a little bit easier to follow, to put that in perspective. But you're looking at, for Klein ISD, about 3 to 5%. And so we're up again on the bottom row there. So you see that 1.3 million students are falling within that 3 to 5%. 1.6 million students in the state are falling between 5 to 8%, which is about 35% of the population. And then 8 to 10 are getting 27% of the students are getting between 8 to 10%. Those are pretty big bumps in funding.
Yeah. So that,
So that
that's great.
again, though, it's still important for us to understand what's happening in Klein, because those people are going to read our headlines, and that may not be applicable to Klein because of the way things are allocated out. And so I just want to make sure, as a board, as a team, we're informed as far as what our impact is and how we can best communicate that. And then this is just the chart. And again, as you noticed, the dark blues, which are the 3 to 5% of the lowest are in the high density areas. Metro, where the CEI adjustment would probably provide a most benefit. All right, so now let's move on to the Senate version of House Bill 3. This one actually, there's another handout. Let's see, it looks like a slide. Again, you can see the slide, that's fine. If you want to write on it, you have a piece of paper there as well. If you move to the change in FSP column, which is about midway, you'll see that there is a highlighted on the screen. It's $22 million. So that's more than 16. So you'd think that, wow, Senate version is pretty good. But 19 and a half of that is tied up into the teacher librarian rates. So if you move all the way over to the last column, that shows you what the new flexible money is. It's $2.5 million. So that's not a whole lot of flexible funds, which means do anything else with the district, provide anybody else a raise. So again, this is where the flexibility in the funding is going to be a strong, an area that we would want to have addressed so that we can appropriately manage the school district. And in fact, the Senate's version, just for the conservative folks, cost would make our budget, Klein ISD, we would have to increase our budget $12 million more than what we were planning this year. So we would, from a conservative standpoint, that seems against all conservative policies, is that we'd actually increase our budget because we'd have to give a larger increase in pay than what we were planning on. And then actually provide pay raises, try to anyway, with the available funds for everybody else. And so it would be a $12 million increase over what we're planning, what we were originally planning, which is anti-conservative in any way to look at it. Any questions on that one? So overall, a little more money than the House, but not just flexible. All right.
And neither of those is going to be the plan.
They will reconcile.
I mean, that's,
Yep.
go through the motions.
But you see how this is what they're having to work through. So you
Yeah.
kind of know why they're quiet right now.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to work through some pretty big differences. And that's a challenge. So I don't envy them at this point. I don't know how to work through these different scenarios. And then trying to come, like any negotiation, no one's happy. And so you end up with some give and take. And so we know something in the middle of this will probably fall out, but we're not quite sure what are going to be the key points that they have to have. There's usually the non-negotiables in there, and then there are a lot of negotiables, and what are the non-negotiables? And those are some of the things we're more really eager to hear hopefully weeks in. All right, that's the update on the House on those bills. We do have a requirement now, as mentioned, for the school's first report to provide some timely information in this case, because the big talk on using current year property values versus prior year property values. I want to show you all the impact on that so y'all are informed. Basically, if we use if the state uses prior year property values, so this isn't in the handouts yet, so we'll have a handout in just a second. If the state continues to use prior year property values, the state is assuming, when they're calculating the formula, that we are collecting based on prior year values times current year rate. So if values grow the next year, or the current year that we're collecting on, values have grown, we collect money that's outside the funding formula. So it's money they don't even know about, technically. I mean, they do, but it's not included in their calculation. So it's a 1 year benefit that we're getting because of rising values. So it's outside the funding formula. So if they move to current year values for calculations of state funding purposes, we no longer get that benefit that's outside the funding formula. They just rolled it all in there. And statewide, it's about $271 per student, which is $1.8 billion a year that the state now picked up as available funds for them to work with. But it's money we were already going to receive. So that's the summary of it. Now the dollars, just to show you the mechanics of it.
It's a shell game.
Yeah.
So there's a
Oh my gosh.
okay, quick explanation. I tried to do a illustration and it was rather crude, but hopefully this is helpful. It looks like it's called funding formula analysis. And it's a 3-year look. Everybody have this? Okay, there's some arrows on it. All right, so the reason I have to do 3 years is because you have to have the prior year to be able to see how it rolls forward. So this is right off of our summary of finance template. So this is how we calculate our funding, our revenue. So let's look at the middle column, the 17-18 actual. And it's broken up into the state funds, which is the first box area. Property tax collections is the second box of area. Then you have a total, which is a small third box section. And then I break it down into what the funding lag benefit is as a result of that. So let's just follow the 17-18 column. You see that $192,596,000. That arrow brings it down to the bottom of breakdown of state and local funding. So that's the direct current year state funding.
Okay.
Now, for their purposes, when they're calculating our $6,000 a student, they're pulling over from prior year tax collections. So $194,338,000. You can see that number from prior year tax collections. So that number pulls down. So what the state is assuming in their formula yield for us for that year was nearly $387 million.
Okay.
We divide that by the number of students. Our funding that the state allowed, according to their formula, was $5,933. What we actually collected was $205 more because we had current year collections. Our property values grew by 7% that year. We collected 7% more in property taxes than what they had calculated we had collected. So what we actually collected was $6,138.
Okay.
So bottom line difference, $13.4 million difference. The purple row shows you your total lag revenue difference. And all it is the simple difference between, if you look at the current property tax collections, the $207.7 million of actual state aid, or actual tax collections versus the $194 million.
Okay.
It's just the difference between those two. They calculated as soon as we collected on prior year, we actually collected on current year, and values grew 6.9% that year. So that additional 1 year bump is the lag benefit.
And so if they were to implement this new plan, it would have cost us is the total amount there in the purple?
It would have cost us, yes, 13.3. They would have rolled all that into the funding formula, and they would have sent us less money.
That's right.
So what would have happened if it was, let's say 17-18, we went to current year. Only thing that would have happened is instead of getting $6,138 in total, our number would have gone down to $5,932 because that was the ceiling.
Yeah.
And the state would have just simply sent us 13.3 less dollars up here in this top section. So their formula yield, because remember how this works. Prime example to help clarify some of this. State funding, the calculation of state funding is totally different than how we collect and how we get paid. State funding is a calculated amount per student that the legislature meets every 2 years and determines how much is each district going to receive in state revenue. Well, the state runs into a situation like this. Well, $6,000 a student, that sounds like a good number. We came up with this formula, we got input from all parties, and we masterfully came up with a great formula that fully funds education. Then they run into the problem of how to pay for it. because the formula is just amount we're gonna receive per student. How you pay for it is something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the state constitution says the state's responsible for providing basic public education. The problem is they don't have enough funds to do it. They can't levy a state property tax. There's no state income tax, you know. Probably won't be one anytime soon. So they basically have sales tax to rely upon for all services of the state. So the state found a great way to say, well, we can't levy a tax, but you know what? In order for you to get that full $6,000 a student, you have to levy $1 of tax rate. In order for you to get the full $6,000. If you don't levy $1 of tax rate, we're going to reduce the amount we receive, we're providing per
So
student.
they use us.
So we're the conduit for a state
In a
property
word,
tax.
yeah.
Well, how does the land trust or figure into it then? I thought a certain amount of money was supposed to. Do we get anything from that land trust?
It does.
Oh.
And that's just part of their revenues that do, the sales tax is the primary source, general
Oh.
revenue source. They have motor fuel tax, they have land, they have, which is just land sales, and then they have margin tax. They have a lot of other sources, but they're small. I mean, the big piece is sales tax, which is why they were touching on it again. Because they got rid of franchise and they replaced it with margin tax, and then that didn't have that money to provide it, didn't generate the revenue they anticipated. And so in order for the school districts, and mind you, people complain about our tax rate. Over 2/3 of it is state required. Okay, that's a major part of our tax rate is the state required. And if we don't levy it, we're not able to generate the full, in our case, $6,000 per student. And it's proportional. So let's say we wanted to reduce the tax rate to 90 cents. They would give us 9/10 of $6,000 per student. They would proportionally reduce it. So the first dollar is a state required tax that school districts have to levy in order to receive the state funding from the state.
For me, it's just the communication of how that rolls out
Yeah.
is totally muddled.
It is. Well, that's why you got
And we as school districts need to make sure that that kind of communication to the community is really, really clear. That's part of our issue, is that, now that we're understanding it, we need to make sure that our community understands it.
That is.
Hard to understand.
It is real difficult to
hard to
understand.
explain.
I
That's
understand.
why I think that the key thing is to separate the funding formula and how it's paid for.
But
Funding formula
good.
stands on its
That's
own.
it is what it is.
I mean,
Yes.
that's just a calculated amount. How it's paid for is something, that's just a
Yeah.
mechanism to fund it.
Yeah.
So people get confused with Robin Hood, property tax
Mhm.
increases, all these things. The big thing is the state determined the funding per student based on the past legislative action.
Yeah.
That generated an amount per student. That's what the districts are supposed to receive, and then they had to figure out how to pay for it. So that's why it's typical whenever you hear Chapter 41 districts going against, or having, I guess, different viewpoints to a property poor district. It's all the same funding. I mean, this is how it works. As Brett mentioned before, there's a cup. Our cup is $6,000 per student, and the state says you have to levy at least $1, and whatever you can collect, you fill up your cup and we make up the difference. Well, for us, it's about 3,000 local, 3,000 state. If our values were so high that, like Spring Branch ISD, and they collect $7,000 a student. Well, the state didn't have to fill up their cup. In fact, Spring Branch needs to send $1,000 per student back to the state. It's all the same point.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
just a mechanism how the money's flowing.
And they have a huge deficit.
Yeah, if you have money flowing locally, then the
Yeah.
state doesn't have to provide it, you may have to flow some up to the state.
Right.
If you don't have money flowing locally, then the state flows money back to it. That's the funding mechanism. The formula is the formula,
Yeah.
and it's key to keep that separate. So, that was it. That's been on my mind, because there's been some conversation that, because whether they live in the district or not. We get funded if they're sitting in a seat.
Yep.
And it's 100% state money then because we don't collect anything locally for them if they don't live here. So that's one of the things that is, as long as we have room, open the door.
That's why it's fun to open up that transfer policy every morning. Not kidding, our county districts are doing this.
That's what
It makes
makes,
sense financially as well, as long as you can afford to.
And you can determine who it is that comes through the door.
Yeah.
as long as you
You
have
can be
room.
picky? Oh, boy, you can be picky.
Yes, you can have an enrollment criteria.
It's
Open
the,
enrollment.
Or not open.
No, you can say,
Auto.
I want to recruit gifted students.
Oh, you just recruit and
This is the
select.
requirement.
And so
What do you call that? Recruitment?
Selection.
Open
you
enrollment?
call
Election
that,
criteria.
you call that charter.
Charter.
The market is becoming very competitive.
Yeah.
We have to compete
You have to specialize, right?
Yeah.
and compete because other charters are specialized
Yeah.
and other school districts are offering specialized programs.
Spring is crazy on it now. They have like the Leadership Academy and the middle schools are all diversified. We're starting down that.
Or could be issues with UIL.
There are certain provisions that you can make. I mean, Tomball does this right now.
You just can't move.
Start, I mean,
schools
or
forward.
any school in Tomball that you want to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timing is everything, right?
I mean, that-
So clearly,
Transportation is something else.
You better believe.
the bottom line on the prior year versus current year is, as long as you're growing, as far as property values, the lag benefits the district. If you're, the only instance where a lag is bad is if you have decline in values. Because the state doesn't recognize a decline for a year, so you might actually have less funding than what the formula generates. So I don't think that's the case statewide. I mean, the state's growing pretty quickly. There might be some pockets of areas that are seeing decline, but by and large, it is benefits, especially most of the districts around here where values are growing. As long as you're not declining. And then looking forward, so that one handout had that bottom line, that purple. So that's what we would have lost in funding being on current year values. $16 million in 16-17, 13.4 in 17-18, 10.3 in 18-19. Now, the next handout and what's on the screen illustrates what projections would look like under current law if we switch to current year values and there's no adjustment to the base allotment or any of the formula. 18-19, we would have received $8 million less. 19-20, since we're growing again, property values only grew about 3% last year. We're seeing some recovery this year, about 6.8. And so that lag benefit is going to be pretty significant for 19-20. So House Bill 3 was $16 million of new money. If they switch to current values and don't further increase the base allotment, that means we're only going to net 4 more because we're already going to get 12. And so it's about, for every 1% in value growth, it's 2.5 million in lag benefit. And that's the rough calculation.
That's why we are not in favor of that change.
Unless they further increase the base allotment. If they level up the base allotment further to what they've already presented, so let's say House Bill 3, under the House version, goes from $6,030 and they bump it up $300, then we'd be okay with that. Because that wouldn't compensate for that additional yield that we were already receiving.
By changing it, what do they do with that one thing,
Well, the Senate's using it to pay for all use pay for raises, and then give us $2.5 million.
So that's a one-time deal though, right? A 1 year,
So,
Two.
2 years?
The 5,000.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I meant if they switch from current value, the prior year to current value, that'd be a 1 year change?
It would be
It happened once.
It basically, we would no longer have a benefit outside the funding formula.
So it would never you essentially never catch up to where
You'd lose $13
You'd
million.
lose, yeah, that's right.
literally lose.
You'd lose it.
For 1920, yeah, as it moves forward, so if you look at 2021, there's only 2% value growth that year in the projections. So you see it's about $5 million.
But
So
you never catch
as
up.
long
No,
as,
yeah.
they'd have to give enough increase in basic allotment to overcome that.
And you can forget that.
Yeah, right. That's what.
That's the spirit, Doug. That's exactly right.
What power of thought is-
Well done, Doug.
That's right, Doug.
You know.
So what does it look like then, as we look at the performance? 'Cause once we get down, the next bit is we call these the money slides, everybody.
All right, so just to let you know what's in the money slide, there is a 6.87% growth in property value. It's one that says general fund financial forecast. Y'all are all looking ahead, just look at the slide.
Oh.
We also have 18-19 projections for students. For 18-19, we projected 53,915 students. What actually showed up, or who actually showed up, was 53,300. So not quite, we didn't quite hit the target. For 19-20, we're actually looking at 53,778 students, which is less than the 18-19 projection. So we're actually year over year showing a decrease. And why does that matter? Because we staff on projections. So we staffed as if 53,915 students were going to show up. They didn't show up. So we actually had a little bit of surplus just built into the formulas, because what we're going to have for next year, or projected to have for next year, is students with less than what our projections were for 18-19. So basically, we carried a little bit of extra staffing for 1 year, and because obviously we do all of our staffing the prior year, planning for those students to come up, and then we provide contracts to the employees. And so the right thing to do is to hold them for a year, let us grow into it. Well, we're not growing quite into our projection numbers, unfortunately. But because growth has slowed, about 1% a year right now, or moving forward, about 1% a year student growth.
And it slowed because of,
I mean, we're not growing faster. Because our build out, we're approaching build out. I mean, we have these little neighborhoods that are popping up. It's
Right.
not, I mean, it's not the big Augusta Pines and some of those
We
big
have a
pieces.
lot of
So we'll
Okay.
continue to grow. And honestly, there's just there's kind of Houston wide, Region 4 wide, that everybody has seen a little bit of that too.
And we were really just uncertain with some Harvey, because we had a kind of an influx. And did they move back out, or what's going on there? And so hopefully things will normalize here in the next year. And
That
see
makes
what
sense.
really, what our true growth rate is.
It's gonna stick.
And then we do have some improvements in interest earnings. Our temporary Harvey money will not be available next year. And then we are looking at a change for food service, moving to a simplified method for charging food service from general fund. So we pay, employees, bid purchasing and things like that. So there's an indirect cost. Also maintenance charges out for various costs of work, for things that are happening in the cafeterias and kitchens. And so our insurance gets charged back to them. So instead of doing all those individual chargebacks, just going to a flat rate of indirect costs, it generates for the general fund about $400,000 more in total dollars. Simplifies the process in order for the food service child nutrition fund to make up the difference. They are looking at modifications to the lunch prices in order to offset that. But thankfully, that's been communicated in an update. Still are lower than our neighbors, so we're definitely keeping in tune with that to make sure our pricing isn't out of range. In fact, we still remain highly competitive. And so that's one of the changes that will benefit the general fund by about $400,000, help us from a deficit standpoint to generate some additional funding. Because alternative funding was one of the things we were trying to look for in order to help make things work.
so let me ask you about Harvey. So no extensions on Harvey stuff, even though impact is still being.
Well, there might be a benefit. That's what we're looking into as far as rate, and I'll touch on that one in just a second.
Okay.
We'll talk about our potential rate options for general fund purposes based on some conversations we've had recently with David Thompson. So his opinion is one that's favorable.
Good.
So we might be looking to exercise that option.
Okay.
Payroll allocations, as I mentioned, enrollment, although from projection over projection is a little bit lower than what and so we've seen a slight decrease there. Minor adjustments to staffing models and supplemental. Our SPED enrollment has grown. That magical 8.5% limit that no one's claiming ever was there is now lifted, and that mysteriously, and there's more students that are applying and are actually qualifying for special ed services. And so we're seeing the percentages increase there. We should generate additional funding as well, but we don't know exactly what service codes that will generate that funding, and so we don't have those figures yet. But we know that the enrollment piece is growing, and so staffing formulas have been worked through and adjustments are being made there. You've seen the 3.5 million that was previously brought to the board. We're looking at, again, more and more students are going through the process and potentially going to qualify, so we'll probably have another adjustment as well based on staffing needs to provide those services. And then overall compensation increase, one of our primary goals is to provide a raise for our staff. And so what we've provided in these estimates is a raise, and it's either going to be funded through the formula adjustments or a potential TRE. And so those are some of the things I want to make sure people are aware of. We will adopt a 10-month budget, but what's presented this evening is 12 months because we want to be comparable for our annual cost, not a 2-month reduction just due to the fact that we're changing a fiscal year. So that what we're being presented is 12 months so that the board can see from a sustainability standpoint, can we sustain it? All right, our campus allocations are pretty flat. We did not, even though we went to a 10-month budget, we did not change what campuses receive per student. And most of what they spend their money on is 10 months because they operate on a 10-month basis for the most part, except for their copiers, which is unfortunately a large part of the budget, that we did not reduce their allocation so that those last 2 months of copier payments they would have made, they could use towards other needs on the campus. So I figured that'd be a one-time, nice little extra bit of money that they can work with to meet some of the campus needs. Department budgets are seeing about a $2.5 million decrease because of the 10-month, primarily utilities, fuel, and there's some other expenditures as well. But about $2.5 million. This is what was initially submitted from campuses and departments. Still pending a final review from cabinet, but just wanted to give you an update of where we're at, what's been submitted to date. All right, money slide. According to Brett.
No.
He said we could have just done this one slide.
Like, here's the slide,
all right.
let's get to the money slide.
Okay.
Yes.
So the first two columns of this slide are current law. So as you recall, we did a swap because of the Hurricane Harvey provision. So our M&O tax rate is currently $1.06. Our INS rate is 37 cents. Typically, it would have been $1.04 for M&O and 39 for INS. Well, based on some of the runs we're seeing, it started at $1. It shows compression from our starting point. Well, they're showing our starting point of $1.06. We're wondering if that's a mistake or are they going to hold us to our $1.06 tax rate. I believe they're going to roll it back to the $1.04 and they'll compress from that point. So I ran both versions to show the difference between the two. So if they require us to roll back to the $1.04, we would generate $440 million in revenue, which is the green, or sorry, most of y'all are looking this way, so I'll point this way. $440 million. We're projecting about $454 million in cost, so we would have a $14.1 million deficit under current law if we were able to provide. We have to do the second year of reductions. We would not be able to restore anything, but it would provide a raise for staff. If we're able to move to $1.06.
Hold on, before you move that
Okay.
column,
Yeah.
and that last percentage number is really important.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the percentage of fund balance that we would have on hand, even giving that $14 million reduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're targeted.
So we're within the policy.
Yep. It would stay within policy. If there's a provision, because the declaration for Harvey continues to be extended, there's actually a declaration in 18, based on governor's action, that would then, by technicality of what's being interpreted as laws, in the year subsequent to a declaration, you could use the disaster provision again. Potentially we would be able to do $1.06 again for the 1920 school year. That's what David Thompson is currently reviewing, and based on his read, feels that it is appropriate. That, if there's no other changes to funding formulas, that would generate a balanced budget. We would have a $658,000 surplus, which is pretty darn close to balanced budget if you're dealing with $454 million.
Now, I would put all the raise, all those things we talked about, break-even budget, and our fund balance would be at 32%.
So, let's say the next column is moving from $1.04, so we don't get the extra 2 cents, but we move from $1.04 to the compressed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so under that scenario, we would have a $1.8 million surplus in that scenario. So that basically is adding $16 million to column 1. So it takes current year law of $1.04, we had $16 million, which is, remember that number from House Bill 3 scenario was, so it was $16,002,525. That would get us to a $1.8 million surplus. So pretty much, again, break-even condition. Best of both worlds, let's see, you get the $16 million of House Bill 3, and you get the 2 cents on top of that. Now we're looking at a $16.6 million surplus, but again, a big piece of that would be for 1 year, because the rate would then have to roll back to $1.04, or whatever compressed version of that it is. When I say compressed, it's reduced.
Right.
So when you hear the word compressed, it means the state is saying, you district have to reduce your rate by 4 pennies, 6 pennies, 8 pennies, 10 pennies, and one version was 15 pennies. So instead of mandating a $1 tax rate, we're going to mandate an 85-cent tax rate for school districts. And don't worry, the state was going to make up the difference with at some point sales tax. But luckily that's all out the door. So I think we're at 4 cents is what, 4 to 6 cents I think is what it'll probably end up being, maybe 8, but we'll see. Because they can't afford anything else. So the Senate, or the House version of House Bill 3 compressed it by 4 cents. So all districts that were at $1.04 would be required to go to $1.
Right.
Okay. And then if you're above, if you had a TRE in the past, they would further compress you. We'll get to that. There was another compression as well if you were above $1. We're not there. Everybody, I'll leave that to another day to computer. Because it is.
So glad we didn't pass the theory.
Yeah. Nope.
So the upshot, this is the slide, this is the literal money slide, and the slide that this budget workshop is the most key thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we don't know how it's all going to play out in the legislature, but any way you slice it, I mean, I want to give real kudos to the finance folks, the
Yes.
cabinet folks,
Yeah.
the zero-based budget things. I mean, this idea of saying we're going to give a raise, and again, we're still looking at some of the details of it, but that any of these scenarios or some variation thereof, the goal was to be ready to roll once the legislature finishes their work.
Yep.
And so the upshot is, that's where we are. And so it's a lot of work to get to this. This slide looks very simple, it's not.
And they'll get a raise. Is that what the
Well,
says?
either the legislature's
Yep,
going to
whichever way.
mandate one,
Yep.
or there's going to be, depending on what they fund,
Yep.
which is option 2, or there will be a TRE. It's
Right.
one of those 3 things. All right, any questions about that?
Squeezing that balloon, man.
Squeeze the balloon.
And then briefly on debt service, good news there with property values growing. We've had, you've seen the refundings that we've been doing. Our interest rates are coming in lower when it comes to our bonds. And so looking at it, we should be able to either hold the rate at 37, because we were supposed to go back up to 39 cents. Looks like we might be able to hold it at 37, which is a good thing. And then if we can do the 2 cents, additional cents on M&O, then our taxpayers won't see any increase in the tax rate. It'll be the exact same tax rate, and we'll be able to benefit another year from that ARB provision. So the good thing there is we previously talked about going up to 41 cents for 18-19, but with the various refunding, better interest rates, we've been able to hold it down. So that's a huge benefit. Gives a little more flexibility. And then there's the other projections.
How does that compare to our neighboring districts?
We are not as high as some,
Yeah, that's right. We're kind of in the middle.
How did I know you were going to give me that answer?
And really, this one is heavily dependent upon where you are in your building program, how quickly are you growing, and then also wealth per student. So we don't have a whole lot of industry in our area. We're primarily rooftops, and so we don't have the large industrial base to help fund.
Right.
Because we do keep all the values associated with bonds. That go to pay towards bonds, but we don't. That's one of the challenges whenever you don't have a whole lot of industrial property around to help cover that. So like Sci Fair, they're at 30 or 31 cents. They have a lot of industrial value. And I figured, I did the calculation last year that if we had other districts' property values, what would our tax rate be?
Yeah.
And we were actually lower. We could be lower than a lot of them.
Yeah, given their
Those are
asset.
so
Yeah.
dependent upon the area.
Okay.
So there is no equalization. We don't get funding for the buildings. That's another piece. Good point, Doug. So if anyone else complains about tax rate, then if the state would actually fund some of our buildings, that would be helpful.
See,
Because that's part of providing education, isn't it? They have to have a place to go.
that communication piece.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
telling
Go
you.
Doug.
Thank you for bringing that up. All right. That is, as you can see, this will give us basically 37 cents, and the next 2 years in this scenario are 39 cents. But all break even, good position in our debt service.
That's right. Again, you look at that last percentage, it's flipped good.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Cool.
Legislative session ends May 27th. The last, probably real action will take place this Friday.
These two.
And then we will adjust for projections based on the approved state formulas. We'll determine compensation adjustments, priorities for restoration of funds that are available, tax rate necessary to fund assumptions, and potentially if very needed, and we'll look at that at a later date. And then our next budget workshop is July 29th. That's on the schedule. If session ends and we feel it's important to get reconvened, that might be a recommendation, just so we can provide the board with solid numbers versus current estimates.
Imaginary.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Schaefer.
Absolutely, great
We
work.
appreciate your fine work, Mr. Schaefer, and that of your, the financial team that you have formulated. As provided by the Texas Government Code, the Board of Trustees will now go into closed session in accordance with sections 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney regarding all matters as authorized by law, including board governance. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, discussing employment, evaluation, or discipline of personnel, including board governance and superintendent evaluation, and contract and including central office administration. 551.076, discussing security, personnel, and devices. 551.082, discussing disciplinary matters or complaints regarding school children and/or school employees. 551.0821, discussing personally identifiable information about public school students. 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations. We are going to go now into close at 7 o'clock. We will reconvene shortly. The first item is the approval of a resolution to compensate employees as defined in the resolution for May 10th, 2019. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It passes 4-0. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of a resolution regarding oversight or assistance for the Human Resource Department for a specific period. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? It passes 4-0. We are now going to reconvene and in a closed session once again in, my watch is not working. 7:06. And according to 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney regarding all matters is authorized by law, including board governance. 551.074, discussing employment, evaluation, or discipline of personnel, including board governance and superintendent evaluation, and contract, and including central office administration. We will reconvene shortly. We will continue our meeting with citizens inquiry. Do we have any inquiries, Mr. James?
No, Madam President, we have none.
All right, very good. We're now ready for comments. None? None. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If
Okay.
there's no objection, it is now 7:30, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Everybody.